Shri Ma Jaya Ma Jaya Jaya Ma 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 Shri Ambe Ma Jagadambe 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 Ma Shri Sarada Ma Jaya Jaya 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 Ma Shri Ma Jaya 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 Ma Jaya Jaya Ma Shri Ambe Ma Jagadambe 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 Ma Shri Sarada Ma Jaya Jaya 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 Ma Shri Ma Jaya Ma Jaya Jaya Ma Om Shri Rama Krishna Bhagavan Ki Jai Pavan Sutta Hanuman Ki Jai Shri Ambe Ambe Mat Ki Jai Shri Mahakali Mahalakshmi Mahasaraswati Shri Durga Mat Ki Jai Namo Sarada Namo Sarada Namo Sarada Mata Namo Sarada Namo Sarada Namo Sarada Mata He Vidya Jnana Pradayini He Vidya Jnana Pradayini Ma Shweta Vasani Kamalasani Ma Shweta Vasani Kamalasani Bhava वसनी कमलासनी महाश्वेत वसनी कमलासनी भवभञ्जनी मनरञ्जनी भवभञ्जनी मनरञ्जनी अम्बा वागेश्वरी माता अम्बा वागेश्वरी माता नमो शारदा नमो शारदा नमो शारदा माता नमो शारदा नमो शारदा नमो शारदा माता नमो शारदा माता नमो शारदा माता नमो शारदा माता ओम श्री राम कृष्ण भगवान की जय पवन सुत हनुमान की जय श्री अम्बे अम्बे मात की जय श्री महाकाली महालक्ष्मी महासरस्वती श्री दुर्गा मात की जय
श्री राम तुहि श्री कृष्ण तुहि श्री राम कृष्ण हरे हरे श्री राम
तुहि श्री कृष्ण तुहि श्री राम कृष्ण हरे हरे
श्री राम तुहि श्री कृष्ण तुहि श्री राम कृष्ण हरे हरे
श्री राम तुहि श्री कृष्ण तुहि श्री राम कृष्ण हरे हरे
हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम
हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम
हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम
हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम
काली तुहि श्री दुर्गा तुहि श्री शारदा माता हरे हरे
श्री काली तुहि श्री दुर्गा तुहि श्री शारदा माता हरे हरे
काली तुहि श्री दुर्गा तुहि श्री शारदा माता हरे हरे
श्री काली तुहि श्री दुर्गा तुहि श्री शारदा माता हरे हरे
जय मां श्री मां जय मां श्री मां जय मां
श्री मां जय मां श्री मां जय मां श्री मां जय मां तुही नरेंद्र तुही स्वामी विवेकानंद हरे हरे
भोलानाथ तुही नरेंद्र तुही स्वामी विवेकानंद हरे हरे
भोलानाथ तुही नरेंद्र तुही स्वामी विवेकानंद हरे हरे
शिवा ओम हर ओम शिवा ओम हर ओम शिवा ओम हर ओम
शिव ओम हर ओम शिव ओम हर ओम
शिवा ओम हर ओम शिवा ओम हर ओम शिवा ओम हर ओम
शिव ओम हर ओम शिव ओम हर ओम शिव ओम हर ओम
राम तुही श्री कृष्ण तुही श्री राम कृष्ण हरे हरे
राम तुही श्री कृष्ण तुही श्री राम कृष्ण हरे हरे
हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम
हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम
काली तुही दुर्गा तुही श्री शारदा माता हरे हरे
काली तुही श्री दुर्गा तुही श्री शारदा माता हरे हरे
जय मां श्री मां जय मां श्री मां जय मां श्री
जय मां श्री मां जय मां श्री मां जय मां
भोलानाथ तुही नरेंद्र तुही स्वामी विवेकानंद हरे हरे
भोलानाथ तुही नरेंद्र तुही स्वामी विवेकानंद हरे हरे
शिवा ओम हर ओम शिवा ओम हर ओम शिवा ओम हर ओम
शिव ओम हर ओम शिव ओम हर ओम शिव ओम हर ओम शिव ओम हर ओम शिव ओम हर ओम शिव ओम हर ओम
राम तुही श्री कृष्ण तुही श्री राम कृष्ण हरे हरे
ओम श्री राम कृष्ण भगवान की जय पवन सुत हनुमान की जय श्री अम्बे अम्बे मात की जय श्री महाकाली महालक्ष्मी महासरस्वती श्री दुर्गा मात की जय 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 करुमारी जय 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 कौमारी जय 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 करुमारी जय 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 कौमारी जय 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 अम्बे अम्बे मात की जय। श्री महाकाली महालक्ष्मी महासरस्वती श्री दुर्गा मात की जय।
ॐ ऐं सर्वदेवदेवी स्वरूपाय श्रीरामकृष्णाय नमः. Om Namo Narayanaaya. Dear devotees of the Divine Mother, my discourse today is entitled The Devotional Hymns in Praise of the Divine Mother from the Devi Mahatmyam. Illustrating the high regard in which the Devi Mahatmyam is held, the Damara Tantra says, like the Ashwamedha in Yagnas, Hari in Devas, so is the Saptashati in Stotras. The Devi Mahatmyam is referred to as the Devi Saptashati or the Shri Shri Chandi. The Saptashati because it comprises of 700 mantras, and the Chandi because it describes the glory of the goddess Chandika. However, the words Devi Mahatmyam literally translated means the glory of the goddess. In the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, Mahendranath Gupta records a Sunday afternoon with some devotees to Dakshineshwar in 1883. One of the visitors was well versed in the Shastras, and the conversation caused M to fall into a pensive mood. Having some knowledge of Vedanta, M later asked Sri Ramakrishna, "Is the world real?" And Sri Ramakrishna responded, "Why should it be real? The Divine Mother revealed to me in the Kali temple that it was she who had become everything, the image, the altar, and the water vessels. I found everything inside the room soaked, as it were, in bliss. I saw a wicked man in front of the Kali temple, but in him I also saw the power of the Divine Mother vibrating. I clearly perceived that the Divine Mother herself had become everything." These teachings of Sri Ramakrishna were spoken from his own experience, and this is consonant with the message of the Devi Mahatmyam, which declares that the Divine Mother is a supreme reality and that she herself has become this universe. Like the authorship of the Vedas, which remains unknown, so too is the authorship of the Chandi. What is verifiable, though, is that the creation of the text is said to have occurred about 1600 years ago and forms part of the Markandeya Purana. However, some of the traditions preserved in the text are much older. We know from evidence of archaeology that some of the Chandi's ideas on the motherhood of God date back to 6,000 years or more. Throughout the ages, the tribal cultures and high civilizations that rose and fell on Indian soil left their mark on the 13 chapters of the Chandi. Prominent among the many and diverse influences is the Devi Sukkata, a divine hymn of 8 verses found in the most ancient Hindu sacred text, the Rig Veda. The Devi Sukkata declares that the goddess is a power expressed through all the gods and that they are united in her. This Vedic hymn is held in high esteem and is considered to be the source from which the entire Chandi sprang. Later, the Chandi itself was elaborated upon in the Puranas and Tantras, and still later its imagery inspired the Bengali mystics Ramprasad and Kamalakanta, whose devotional songs so often evoked ecstatic moods in Sri Ramakrishna. Today, we will look at the 4 hymns of the Devi Mahatmyam that were chanted during the Ashtami Havan within the context of the narrative of the text itself. The hymns being the Brahmastuti, the Shakaradi Stuti, the Aparajita Stuti, and the Narayani Stuti. The Chandi begins with King Surita, who is plunged into existential crisis after losing his kingdom in battle. A wise and just ruler, Surita discovers that even his trusted ministers have turned against him, and on the pretext of going hunting, he mounts his horse and flees for his life. After riding for some time, he comes to the ashram of a sage named Medas. This forest retreat was a place of great calm and natural beauty. Yet Suratha knows no peace. His mind churns in agony at the thought of everything that he had lost, his kingdom with its riches and privileges, the loyalty of his subjects, and the glory of power. Now these thoughts torment him ceaselessly. Soon another visitor arrives at the hermitage. His name is Samadhi, and he is every bit as despondent as the king. Once a prosperous merchant, Samadhi has been cast out by his wife and sons who have seized his wealth. He is deeply hurt by their betrayal and cannot understand it. Most of all, he cannot understand why he still feels great love for those who caused him deep humiliation and pain. And so the king and the merchant approach the sage Medas to seek the cause and the solution for their anguish. And so we arrive at the heart of the Chandi. The story told to the king and the merchant by the seer acts as a frame that encloses 3 additional stories, which the sage relates in order to instruct his 2 disciples. Each story is a mythical account of the Divine Mother's fierce battle against demons. Alongside the narratives of the Divine Mother's battles, the Chandi integrates 4 hymns that are rich in philosophical and theological content. These hymns inspire us to devotion to the personal form of God as Mother, and its deeper philosophical interpretation leads us to the realization of God as the impersonal supreme reality or Brahman. The first of the hymns is the Brahma Stuti, and it can be found in the first myth as told by sage Medas. It is said that during the period of cosmic dissolution, Lord Vishnu lay in deep slumber on the waters of the cosmic ocean. 2 demons, Madhu and Ketab, arise as thought forms from Lord Narayana's sleeping body and attempt to vanquish Lord Brahma, who is preparing to create the next cycle of the universe. Frantically, Lord Brahma tries to awaken Lord Vishnu, but the Lord is held in the power of Mahamaya. And so Lord Brahma praises Mahamaya with a hymn, the Brahma Stuti. The Divine Mother, then duly propitiated, withdraws herself, and Lord Vishnu awakens and vanquishes the demons. In the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, M records the Master's thoughts on the Divine Mother as Mahamaya. The Master says, and I quote, "God has created this world in play, as it were. This is called Mahamaya, the great illusion. Therefore, one must take refuge in the Divine Mother, the cosmic power itself. It is she who has bound us with the shackles of illusion. The realization of God only comes when the shackles are severed. One must propitiate the Divine Mother, the primal energy, in order to obtain God's grace. God himself is Mahamaya, who deludes the world with her illusion and conjures up the magic of creation, preservation, and destruction. We can enter the inner chamber only when she lets us pass through the door. Living outside, we only see outer objects, but not the eternal being. Therefore, it is stated in the Puranas that deities like Brahma praise Mahamaya for the destruction of the demons Madhu and Ketab." Unquote. Sage Medas's second story is intended especially for the king. Suratha, like Arjuna in the Gita, belonged to the warrior caste, whose duty it was to uphold the moral order of the world. In the story that Medas relates, an ill-tempered buffalo demon named Mahishasura wages war against heaven, casts out the gods, and usurps Indra's throne. When the dispossessed gods seek Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiva's help, the Divine Mother herself comes to the rescue. First from Vishnu's brow, then from the bodies of all the other gods, a great radiance shines forth and coalesces into the beautiful form of Devi Durga. The gods bow down to her, recognizing that their own individual powers were only aspects of her supreme power. After the Devi has slain Mahishasura's forces, she stands on the battleground facing the buffalo demon himself. After Mahishasura is slain, the gods celebrate the Devi's triumph in the longest and most eloquent of the Chandi's 4 hymns, known as the Shakaradi Stuti. In the Stuti, we reflect on the themes of good and evil, fate and free will, and karma and divine grace. The hymn praises the Divine Mother as good fortune dwelling in the homes of the virtuous and misfortune in the abodes of the wicked. A central theme of the hymn is a distinction between good and evil, or dharma and adharma. A working definition which might go like this. Good dharmic acts are those which take us towards the divine, towards love, unity and harmony. Evil or adharmic acts are those acts which distance us from the divine and creates injury, disunity and dissension in our lives. However, the hymn is at pains to point out that the Divine Mother's benevolence is great. In the hymn, through her inconceivable grace, even wrongdoers who have committed errors are purified in battle by the touch of her weapons and are brought to beatitude. Finally, the sage Medas tells us a third and final story, one that points towards realizing our inner perfection beyond this world. The story has a familiar beginning. 2 demons named Shumba and Nishumba have dispossessed the gods, stripped them of their powers, and appropriated their wealth and privilege. This time the cast of characters is much larger, and the demons seem more like us than the ones we've met previously. We first meet Shumba sitting in his palace, amid his glittering hoard of stolen treasure. Soon 2 fawning servants, Chanda and Munda, enter with news that they've seen a young woman of captivating beauty dwelling in the Himalayas. Playing upon Shumba's vanity, they suggest that he who is all wealthy and all powerful surely must also possess this jewel amongst women. Little do they know that she is the Divine Mother herself. When the smooth-talking messengers deliver a marriage proposal, the Devi plays along with delicious irony. But after she refuses the marriage proposal, the honeyed words of the proposal turn threatening. Ultimately, a fierce battle ensues, and the Devi demonstrates her omnipotence by defeating the demoniac brothers and their supporting caste of generals. Medas then relates how the gods again praise the Divine Mother in the 4th and final hymn, the Narayani Stuti. 3 of its verses are well known in the Ramakrishna Sharada Sangha. They are sung every evening around the world in temples of the Ramakrishna order during Vesper services, commencing with the words Om Sarva Mangala Mangalye. Finally, sage Medas sends his 2 disciples to the bank of the river, where they meditate and worship the Divine Mother with great devotion. After 3 years, the Divine Mother appears to them and offers each a boon. Surita, who we remember has unfinished business, asks for the return of his earthly kingdom, followed by an imperishable kingdom in the next life. The merchant Samadhi, on the other hand, has grown wise and dispassionate, and he asks for knowledge that will dissolve the bondage of worldly existence. Through the Divine Mother's grace, each boon is granted in keeping with the Chandi's teaching that the Divine Mother is Bhukti Mukti Pradayani, meaning the bestower of worldly enjoyment and liberation. Just how conversant Sri Ramakrishna was with the teachings of the Chandi is made clear in a conversation he had with members of the Brahmo Samaj in the autumn of 1882. In a single paragraph that summarizes the essential message of the Chandi, Sri Ramakrishna says, "Bondage and liberation are both of her making. By her Maya, worldly people become entangled again and again, and by her grace again, they attain liberation." Unlike the 3 other hymns which are intimately connected to the battle narratives, the 3rd hymn, the Aparajita Stuti, is an ecstatic celebration of the Divine Mother's presence in the world. It reminds us to simply see divinity everywhere around us, because the Divine Mother abides in all beings as intelligence, as forgiveness, modesty, peace, beauty, good fortune, compassion, contentment, and in countless other ways. We need only to remember her presence, and as a sign of her grace, it is she who abides in each of us in the form of our memory. I conclude with a verse from this hymn, which says, "To her who presides over the elements and the senses, and is ever present in all beings, to the all-pervading Devi, salutations again and again." Hari Om Tat Sat.
गिरिनन्दिनि नन्दितमेदिनि विश्वविनोदिनि नन्दिनुते गिरिवरविन्ध्यशिरोदिनि वासिनि विष्णुविलासिनि जिष्णुनुते भगवति हे चितिकण्ठकुटुम्बिनि भूरि कुटुम्बिनि भूरि कृते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते सुरवरवर्षिणि दुर्धरदर्शिनि दुर्मुखमर्षिणि हर्षरते त्रिभुवनपोषिणि शङ्करतोषिणि किल्बिषमोषिणि घोषरते धनुजनिरोषिणि दितिसुतरोषिणि दुर्मदशोषिणि सिन्धुसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते हरि जगदम्ब मदम्ब कदम्ब वना प्रियवासिनि हासरते शिखरि शिरोमणि तुङ्ग हिमालय शृङ्गनिजालय मध्यगते मधु मधुरे मधुकैतवगञ्जिनि कैतवभञ्जिनि हासरते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते ऐशरनागत वैरिवधूवर वीरवराभयदायकरे त्रिभुवनमस्तकशूलविरोधि शिरोधि कृतामलशूलकरे धुमि धुमि तामर दुन्दुभिनाद महोमुखरी कृतदिङ्मकरे जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते धनुरनुशङ्करनक्षन सङ्गपरिस्फुरदङ्गनतत्कतके कनकप्रिशङ्गनिशङ्कर सत्पटशृङ्गहतावचुके कृतचतुरङ्गबलक्षितिरङ्गगत बहुरङ्गरतत्वटुके जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते हरि सुमन 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 सुमनोहर कान्तियुते श्रितरजनी रजनी 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 करवक्रविते सुनयन विभ्रमर भ्रमर 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 भ्रमराधिपते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते नमोऽस्तुते ॐ श्री महाकाली महालक्ष्मी महासरस्वती श्री दुर्गा माता की जय।
न तातोय न माता न बन्धोय न दाता न पुत्रोय न पुत्री न भेद्यो न भर्ता न जायाय न वेद्या न वेद्येममेव गते स्वं त्वमेका भवानी गते स्वं त्वमेका भवानी भवाब्दावपाले महादुःखभीरो पपाता प्रकामी प्रलोभी प्रमत्ता कुसंसारपाशा प्रबद्धा सदाहं गते स्वं त्वमेका भवानी गते स्वं त्वमेका भवानी न जानामि दानं न च ध्यानयोगं न जानामि तन्त्रं न च स्तोत्रमन्त्रं न जानामि पूजां न च न्यासयोगं गते स्वं त्वमेका भवानी गते स्वं त्वमेका भवानी न जानामि पुण्यं न जानामि तीर्थं न जानामि मुक्तिं गयं वा कदाचित् न जानामि भक्तिं व्रतं वापि मातर् गते स्वं त्वमेका भवानी गते स्वं त्वमेका भवानी कुकर्मी कुसङ्गी कुबुद्धि कुदासा कुलाचारहीना कदाचारहीना कुदृष्टि कुवाक्य प्रबन्धा सदाहं गते स्वं त्वमेका भवानी गते स्वं त्वमेका भवानी ब्रजेशं रमेशं महेशं सुरेशं दिनेशं निशितेश्वरं वा कदाचित् न जानामि चान्यत् सदाहं शरण्ये गते स्वं त्वमेका भवानी गते स्वं त्वमेका भवानी विवादे विषादे प्रमादे कृष्ण भगवान की जय।
Om Namo Narayanaya, dear sisters and brothers. Let us sit calmly and focus our minds on the glorious form of the Divine Mother who showers auspiciousness on all. Mother Divine, noted for your zeal in affording protection to the weak and the afflicted. O Mother, the dispeller of the miseries of all, to you, O Narayani, our salutations. O Queen of all, you who exist in the form of all and possess every might, save us from error, O Devi. Salutations to you, Devi Durga. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
अम्बे तू है जगदम्बे काली, जय दुर्गे कप्पर वाली, तेरे ही गुण गाए ब्रह्मा विष्णु महेश्वरा। ओ मैया हम सब उतारे तेरी आरती, ओ मैया हम सब उतारे तेरी आरती। अम्बे तू है जगदम्बे काली, जय दुर्गे कप्पर वाली, तेरे ही गुण गाए ब्रह्मा विष्णु महेश्वरा। ओ मैया हम सब उतारे तेरी आरती, ओ मैया हम सब उतारे तेरी आरती। तेरे जगत के भक्त जनन पर वीर परी है भारी, तेरे जगत के भक्त जनन पर वीर परी है भारी। दानव दल पर दूत पड़ो माँ करके सिंह सवारी, सातों सिंह पे तू बलिहारी है 10 भुजाओं वाली, दुष्टों को तू ही तो संहारती। ओ मैया हम सब उतारे तेरी आरती, ओ मैया हम सब उतारे तेरी आरती। माँ बेटे का है इस जग में बड़ा ही निर्मल नाता, माँ बेटे का है इस जग में बड़ा ही निर्मल नाता। पूत कपूत सुन है प्रणाम, माता सुने कुमाता, सब पे अमृत बरसाने वाली, सबको हर्षाने वाली, नैया भंवर से उतारती। ओ मैया हम सब उतारे तेरी आरती, ओ मैया हम सब उतारे तेरी आरती। नहीं मांगते धन और दौलत, ना चांदी ना सोना, नहीं मांगते धन और दौलत, ना चांदी ना सोना। हम तो मांगे माँ तेरे मन में एक छोटा सा कोना, सबके करुणा बरसाने वाली, विपदा मिटाने वाली, सतियों के सत्य को आरती। ओ मैया हम सब उतारे तेरी आरती, ओ मैया हम सब उतारे तेरी आरती। अम्बे तू है जगदम्बे काली, जय दुर्गे कप्पर वाली, तेरे ही गुण गाए ब्रह्मा विष्णु महेश्वरा। ओ मैया हम सब उतारे तेरी आरती, ओ मैया हम सब उतारे तेरी आरती। अम्बे जय जय जगदम्बे काली चंडिके अम्बे जय जय जगदम्बे शारदा चंडिके अम्बे जय जय जगदम्बे काली चंडिके अम्बे जय जय जगदम्बे शारदा चंडिके ओ मैया अंबिके ओ मैया चंडिके ओ मैया शारदा ओ मैया अंबिके ओ मैया चंडिके ओ मैया शारदा
अम्बे तू है जगदम्बे काली जय दुर्गे कप्पर वाली तेरे ही गुण गाए ब्रह्मा विष्णु महेश्वरा ओ मैया हम सब उतारे तेरी आरती ओ मैया हम सब उतारे तेरी आरती ओ मैया ओम कर्पूरगौरम करुणावतारम संसारसारम भुजगेन्द्रहारम सदा वसन्तं हृदयारविन्दे भवन् भवानी सहितं नमामि भवन् भवानी सहितं नमामि मङ्गलं भगवान् विष्णु मङ्गलं गरुडध्वजा मङ्गलं पुण्डरीकाक्ष मङ्गलाय तनोहरि सर्वमङ्गलमाङ्गल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थसाधिके शरण्ये त्र्यम्बके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते नारायणी नमोस्तुते ॐ सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति 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 हरि ओम तत्सत्
जय श्री गुरु महाराज की
जय।
महामाई की
जय।
स्वामी जी महाराज की
जय।
गंगा मात की
जय।
महावीर स्वामी जी की
जय।
सर्व ऋषि मुनियों की
जय।
पार्वती पतये हर हर महादेव की जय। श्री महाकाली महालक्ष्मी महासरस्वती
सरस्वती श्री दुर्गा मात की